Hello everyone, and welcome to Phoenix Gaming History, the show that takes your favorite games and looks at them from a historical perspective. For our first ever episode, we're going to look at one of my all-time favorite FPS games, Wolfenstein: The New Order. Although this game takes place in an alternate timeline, where the Nazis win the Second World War, there's still some very interesting historical references to be had here. Throughout the game, you fight with a resistance group stationed in the dystopian Nazi city of Berlin. This is by no means the Berlin we see in our timeline. The game's Berlin is full of towering concrete structures, fountains, and monuments, all built with super concrete. It turns out that Bethesda did their homework, and super concrete was a real thing. Even before the war had begun, Hitler knew he wanted to build a super city. This super city, in his eyes, would become the world capital, and it would all be built with super concrete. By 1937, plans had already started being drawn up to build a super city, including an arch that would be 3 times the size of the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, France. The Grand Hall, one of the centerpieces of Hitler's New Berlin, is featured prominently in Wolfenstein: The New Order. Albert Speer, Hitler's main architect, ran into an issue though. Berlin was built on a marshy swamp and had to test if the ground could hold the weight of the buildings they planned to make. Albert Speer ordered a giant concrete cylinder to be made very close to where the arch would be put up. In its base there were multiple measuring instruments which by 1944 had deduced that if Albert Speer wanted to build the buildings he had planned to, he would have needed to considerably fortify the ground. Berlin is not the only site, however, of Nazi superstructures. Some were scattered throughout Europe and were used to fight Hitler's war. The Nazis constructed large anti-aircraft towers which housed 88mm anti-aircraft guns and supporting armament. These would be the towers that would attack Allied bombers as they made their way deep into Germany to attack Berlin and other Nazi cities. The Nazis also ordered the building of U-boat pens to protect the submarines of the Kriegsmarine. These submarines were what was winning the war in the Atlantic, and Hitler knew he needed to protect them from Allied bombing raids. These structures were capable of taking multiple direct hits from Allied bombers and not crumbling. They are still standing in many places in Europe today. So as you can see, Bethesda did do their homework, and the level design in Berlin in the game does match that of Hitler's future planned Berlin. But were the Nazis the only ones to experiment with super concrete and megastructures? You remember those submarines we talked about? Well, they were winning the war in the Atlantic for the Germans for quite a long time, sinking the supply ships that Britain desperately needed to continue fighting the war. So Britain needed an answer to the submarine threat. The Allied answer to these submarines was a giant ice concrete aircraft carrier made out of a secret material called pykrete, which was literally sawdust in ice. This design would have been virtually impenetrable to torpedoes and would have made this a fortress of Allied air power in the North Atlantic. Although never finished, it was tested in northern Canada on a very small scale in a very small floating barge. The war ended, however, and the project was never finished. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I know it's a really short thing. I wanted to make these episodes a little bit longer in the future. This is a really big test episode type thing that I'm going to put out there. So I hope you guys like it. If you did, please leave a like. Subscribe to this channel if you want to see more of this in the future. And as always, have a nice day.